Hello, lords and ladies of the realm. It is I, Emily Sophia, aka M Lady Sophia, here to break down for you, better late than never, the latest episode of Game of Thrones. Y'all know what I'm talking about. We are on season 6, episode 9, 6-9, AO, Battle of the Bastards. So, spoiler alert, before I dive into the mad thick of things, as I shall be endeavoring to bear all in this review, and I apologize that this is up late because I was one of the unfortunate ones who was barred from watching the episode on time because HBO Now was completely besieged by internet traffic. So while one battle was going on, there was another battle being waged for access to this episode. So I watched it very late. I was very sleep deprived and now I'm here. So let's discuss. This is probably among the more exhilarating episodes that I have seen over the course of this show's runtime. I was shaken like an earthquake. I tell you what, I mean, people have told me in the past, like, oh, you should do like reaction videos or, videos of you watching the episode and responding, and like, this would have been a good episode to do it. Unfortunately, I don't think that I could film it and recapture all of my emotions because I was watching it for the first time. It was so fresh, so raw, so visceral, so hard to know what to expect. I was legitimately yelling at my computer at certain points. I was yelling at Jon Snow when he went charging out into the field after Rickon. I was yelling pretty much anytime Ramsay Snow's perfect pasty little white face showed up on my screen, because the thing that was so infuriating about this entire battle is that, of course, the entire reason why it actually took place is because Ramsay Bolton, I should say, is a very insecure man. A man who is by no means secure in his manhood, in his skills, and who knows that he could easily be bested by friggin' Jon Snow. It goes without saying. So he decides to throw bodies upon bodies upon bodies at Jon and his army simply because he's not man enough to face off against the former Lord Commander mano a mano. So that was kind of this undercurrent of hilarity that pervaded this episode for me, because I was just like, God damn, like, really? Really? And so I continued to become more hopeful as the episode progressed, because I was like, clearly the writers are positioning Ramsay Bolton for a major takedown. Just judging by the interaction between him and Jon and Sansa, as they rode out into the field to discuss the terms and all that good jazz, I was like, okay, we're probably going to sustain some pretty heavy losses, but I would be shocked if the Starks and company did not come out on top. And I guess that is just a little bit of optimism that I need to curb for the future. And I don't know how I continue to have it after watching this show for as many years as I have, and losing as many beloved characters as I have. But there was something about the way, just even as the odds seemed absolutely insurmountable, I still had this feeling of like, come on, we can pull this out. And we did. Now, a big thing that I'm sure many people have been discussing, I haven't really had a chance to be on the internet all that much to look and see what people are saying about this, but I'm sure that one point of contention in the fan community right now is the question of, why didn't Sansa tell Jon about Baelish in the Knights of the Vale? What exactly was her reasoning there? And that is something that I've tried to puzzle over, because I did see a couple of people saying, like, okay, why didn't she share that information? When she goes after Jon, after the war meeting, everybody is trying to establish their plans, and she comes at him like, why didn't you ask what I think? I am the one who knows this man. I am the one who has been abused by him up close and personally. So why don't you want my input? But then at that point, John proceeds to ask her, you know, he's almost begging, like, tell me what we can do. And at that point, she just says, you know, like, he is the layer of traps. He is not the one trapped. So what I suspect, you know, one way you could look at it is like, okay, was Sansa trying to selfishly claim the victory for them, or does she feel like she is unable to even trust John enough with the truth of her plan? But the way that I see it is that she was ultimately trying to protect him in a way, I guess. Like, it seems kind of backwards, and I still don't fully grasp why she ultimately decided not to tell him. But I think that part of it was so that John, without the knowledge of what was coming, wouldn't find himself trapped in some sense, thinking that he has all the information, but then finding out that Ramsay has something else on him. Does that make sense? You know, so like sort of trying to protect John and his men by coming in with the reinforcements that nobody expected. I don't know. I mean, again, if I'm totally off base and you just think that is utter bullshit, you tell me. But you know, and there's a lot of really interesting interplay between John and Sansa in this episode that was really cool to watch, because we see that John is super impassioned and hot-blooded and impulsive and reckless. I mean, the whole running after Rickon part, that is not something that Sansa would have done, because she was already convinced that that Ramsay was going to take out Rickon in some way, and that's precisely what he did. And it sucks. I am so glad that Ramsay is no more, that he is a thing of the past, because there are several characters that have been brought only to be killed off by him. And he is just such a, like, impenetrable Mary Sue villain. I mean, he is incredibly awful, to the point that it is so much easier to hate him than it was even to hate Joffrey of all people. But yeah, so it really sucked to lose Rickon to him like that, you know, the whole let's play a game situation. There's a lot of Hannibal Lecter moments with Ramsay too, if you noticed, you know. Of course, there's a little bit of visceral Tormund Giantsbane biting the neck of, was that Lord Umber there in the battlefield? Okay, so a little bit of flesh chompy was going on. But then ultimately, of course, when Sansa gets her just desserts, they have this kind of Hannibal Clarice moment of like, I'll always be a part of you, and then at which point Sansa proceeds to feed him to his own dogs, and it was very, very satisfying on so many levels, and I think the perfect end to the type of character that Ramsay was, and it was really, really great to watch him squirm and beg for his life, as so many others have begged for mercy at his hand, and for him to be destroyed essentially by his own like just his own evil. He is utterly consumed by it, his own sadism, you know. But anyway, so I need to backtrack. John is in the midst of all of this insanity. He is completely overwhelmed. He is driven by emotion and care for his brother, and finds himself completely enmeshed in the battle. He is exposed such that when Ramsay's men charge, he is in the thick of it for pretty much the entire duration of the major battle as it takes place in the field. But it's pretty cool, because even though that is essentially right where Ramsay wants him, he still makes his way through. You know, he is covered in the blood of, I mean, not only his own men, but of Ramsay's as well. And so that moment when they are facing each other, I believe after Littlefinger and the Knights of the Vale show up and they break the lines that phalanx that Jon and his men are trapped in, just to see Ramsay Bolton completely unscathed. And he's just sitting there literally on his high horse, as Jon is just like absolutely smeared with blood and viscera, and it is so just like, you're dead. At that point, it was pretty much a foregone conclusion, but it was a very, very hard fought win for everyone involved, and certainly one of the more impressive battle episodes that we have gotten so far, I would say. I mean, HBO continues to up the visual ante and the cinematography, and what was really cool about this battle and what made it unique from some of its predecessors and thus more difficult to compare, like, okay, ranking the battles, which one is the best? This one is distinctly different in that we spend a lot of the time as the audience on the ground level. We are on the battlegrounds. We are seeing the bodies flying over us. We are seeing just horses and men and spears and arrows and blades, and just everything is an utter mess. It is pure chaos. And that point where Jon finds himself pinned beneath layers upon layers of men, I mean, it's just absolutely, it's insane, you know? Like, just the visceral and relentless portrayal of the battle, I think was super, super striking to me. And, you know, seeing how he almost, like, there are points where Jon is within an arm's reach of death by asphyxiation, of all things. You know, these are things that we don't necessarily consider watching other battles, where we are, you know, just kind of in a lofty position watching everything from above. But even though we do get a couple of points like that, just to kind of see the different maneuvers that are being pulled and the different tactics that the armies are using, still, for a lot of it, we're in the thick of it too. You know, we are surrounded and crushed. Just the action is so close that it's basically palpable. The brutality of war is by no means swept under the rug when it comes to this episode. And so I applaud the showrunners and everyone who participated in making this battle happen. My hat is tipped to you, because it was thrilling as all get out. You know, I am not a sports watcher, but watching this kind of stuff, I was jumping up out of my seat. I was calling people out. I was shouting. I was pretty much their own personal cheerleader that they couldn't even hear. So it was incredible. Just the visuals were astronomical, as expected. I mean, I would have been shocked if they were subpar on any level. But yeah, so to kind of condense my thoughts on the battle, the devastation that we witness in this episode is essentially just a manifestation of Ramsay's own weakness and cowardice. That is the incredible irony that pervades the episode and takes it all the way to the very end. You know, had he kept the fight between himself and Jon, there would have been no need for further bloodshed, but he knows that the only way that he can best his adversary, the only way, is through manipulation. That is who Ramsay is, and that is what he do. He twists and abuses and hides behind other people at every given opportunity. But however, even when he gets Jon exactly where he wants him, Jon removes every obstacle in his path and emerges covered in the blood of all of these men. And at that point, you know, we see that Ramsay's attempts to compensate for his glaring inadequacies betray him. And Jon's ferocity ultimately serves to underscore Ramsay's fragility. So I think that was probably my favorite just thematic aspect of the episode. And it was incredible to see Tormund and Davos and Jon and the giant from the wildling camp, all of them in action. Rest in peace, big friendly giant, sir. I forget his name. I have not heard it enough to have it cemented in my brain, but man, what a way to go down. He was a freaking Leviathan pincushion, and he survived right up until the last moment, of course, when Ramsay put an arrow in his eye. But you know, the big thing of this episode is that the usurpers get served, okay? We see that the masters of beasts and men are overthrown by arguably the good guys. I say arguably because, well, there's a lot of question as to whether, you know, Daenerys Targaryen can be considered one of the good guys. She aspires to greatness and to goodwill and making the world a better place. But she's got a lot of armies under her jurisdiction now, you know, from the sellswords and the Unsullied and the Dothraki, and it's going to be a little difficult for her not to leave a devastating footprint wherever she goes, I imagine, because no matter what respect she commands, well, is it misguided to believe in kings and queens, you know, even newcomers to the game like Daenerys, who believes herself to be completely different from her father. But of course, I digress. I will talk about that battle towards the end of this review too. But yeah, it was super cool to see how a lot of the women came out on top this week, you know, because we've got Daenerys pretty handily claiming the victory with her dragons. We see that Yara gets an alliance that puts her in a good position to finally rule over the Iron Islands. And then, of course, we see that Sansa gets her revenge. And I wonder, too, if her keeping her communications with Peter Baelish clandestine was part of her wanting to kind of claim a victory for herself. I'm not trying to say that Sansa's actions in this episode were completely selfish, but, you know, I do have my concerns. And I think that this tentative alliance that she has forged with Peter in order to get his men to claim the victory and take back Winterfell, it's not going to work out so well. But I certainly don't want to undercut her personal victory, and I apologize, my computer is being so loud in the background, I can hear it, and there's nothing I can do right now. But yeah, that whole sequence of her in the prison unleashing Ramsay's own hounds on him was just poetic justice. You know, it makes me think of if y'all remember that review that I did for the Purple Wedding episode, I so am ready to break it down and do a happy dance. And I was even screaming as Jon was punching Ramsay's lights out. I was like, finish it. But he looks at Sansa and he knows, like, this is not his battle to win necessarily with this guy. Yeah, they both lost their brother to him, but Sansa has suffered so much more at the hands of this man. And so for her, as a survivor of this man's torture, for her to come out on top, if I can speak correctly, is really dang good. It's exactly what I would have wanted. Now there are some points of concern, of course, that I must discuss as I celebrate here. The Starks taking back Winterfell. We see the flayed man banners fall, and the direwolf banners be unfurled over the sides of the fort, and it's very, very exciting stuff, and long overdue for sure. But now, so here are kind of the things that I'm thinking. Let's travel on over to Essos really quickly to discuss the fallout of Dany's victory over the slavers who come a-calling for their property. I am so glad that Tyrion has been on the grounds of Meereen in Dany's absence, and he really is able to serve as a very capable advisor to her, because as she insists upon completely razing the cities of the masters and burning their ancient lands to dust, Tyrion is not hesitant to remind her that her father also had a penchant for killing everything with fire. Now, Dany insists, and this is something that is a slight cause for alarm, she insists that her cause is very different. But, you know, those who believe themselves to be different from the bad guys, fundamentally, are the ones who find a kinship with those individuals, and who find themselves in quite possibly a place of compromise. And so we definitely get to see Daenerys' Targaryen-style mercilessness and ruthlessness come into play. That's not to say that watching her devastate the fleets of the slave masters with her dragons was a thing of beauty, because, I mean, as we have seen the dragons grow, we have also seen the quality of the CGI in this show really, really get turned up a notch. So watching this sort of battle was truly grandiose and extravagant and visually pleasing and titillating on every possible level. I was a huge fan. It was great. And I love to get to see the show take on these cinematic qualities. That is arguably one of its greatest strengths, and it is something that is so pleasurable. But anyway, so seeing her conquer the Masters in fiery fashion, even seeing Grey Worm killing off a couple of their leaders in one foul swoop was super great, and Tyrion delivering the death sentence. You know, it was a team effort. It was pretty good. But, you know, I think it's safe to say that Daenerys' path to Westeros is arguably going to be a violent one, despite her aspirations of leaving the world better off than it was before. Now, that, of course, leads me to her bonding moment with Yara. You know, both of them get to forge a connection over the fact that their dads were pretty bad dudes, which is funny because this episode aired on Father's Day, so a little fun bit of irony for you. And there was quite a bit of flirtation that was going on too. Dany didn't seem to be rejecting it, so who knows what the future holds for these two ladies of power. But of course, I do have a question. Now that Yara and arguably the people of the Iron Islands are going to be supporting the legitimacy of Daenerys' claim to the Iron Throne, the question is, are the people of the Iron Islands going to concede to Dany's demands that they put an end to their thieving, pillaging, and plundering ways? Because they basically have been running rampant like pseudo-pirates for who knows how long. But you know, I don't know if that's a smaller question or if there's going to be bigger implications to their alliance, but I do continue to be nervous. You know, all is not necessarily going to go according to plan, but Tyrion supports things despite his unpleasant encounters with Theon Greyjoy in the past. But yeah, it was really cool to see these characters from disparate lands meet each other, even though arguably their travels went at like the speed of light for them to get there when they did. That, or the timelines are different, and the things that we're jumping back and forth between in a single episode are supposed to be happening at different times. But I digress. So yes, again, is Sansa's victory over Ramsay and House Bolton with the backing of Littlefinger and the Knights of the Vale, is that going to blow up in her face? Because I would say that Peter's support is clearly conditional, especially given the whole "you know what I want" thing from the preview for next week, which is like, oh god, what is going to happen now? But yeah, arguably, he's still climbing the ladder of chaos, okay? It would not surprise me if he wants to come out as Lord of Winterfell, Warden of the North. He gets control of the Vale. He gets to control all the things and be in a pretty, you know, sitting pretty. Let's just say that. Yeah, again, as far as why Sansa neglected to tell Jon about her scheme, I think it was to, in some twisted way, protect him and to be able to secure that victory over Ramsay as one who knows him. Not simply by winning out of sheer luck, but she really wanted to deal a strategic blow to this guy, and who can blame the sister? I mean, he had it coming. For sure. Now, another question for you all. What role is the Red Priestess going to play in Winterfell now that Davos knows that she had a hand in burning little Shireen Baratheon at the stake? Okay, that's an important thing. Of course, that moment follows the moment of Davos' discovery of Shireen's the little gift that he gave to her in the ashes and the wood buried in the snow. It came after a pretty cool scene where he and Tormund are kind of, talking about their respective former leaders and what it's going to be like to, hold high the banner for Jon Snow, who's not a king, but something else entirely. And now I think that Davos might have a tougher time sticking around to help Jon in light of the things that the Red Priestess has done. And now that she's brought him back and the Lord of the Light wants to do something with Jon, and that could definitely complicate things, and I think it's going to be a source of tension in the finale episode. And now, hopping back on over to Essos and Meereen, what is the arrival of the Dothraki in town going to spell out for those beeps? Lord of the Light is starting to take a hold down there as well, so I don't know how Dany's going to feel about that, per se. And, of course, another question now that the Lannisters and the Freys have taken back River Run, what's next in their camp? We are going to be spending some time in King's Landing, though, so do expect some interesting shenanigans there as the trials go down for Loras and I think Cersei as well. We'll see. So, again, crazy cool episode. I am a super fan. It was very thrilling. I was taut and shaking and just rendered electric at every turn. Some great victories were had this time around, and we've certainly got our work cut out for us in the finale as well, as far as tying up certain plots and continuing to weave them together and move towards the future. So thank you all so much for waiting patiently for this review. Those of you who showed up, you are splendid individuals. And as always, I will be back before you know it.